Welcome. Our group had the country Zimbabwe for Unit 2, Country Language Policy Case Study for CLDE 1000. Our group members are Nye, Osvan, Jonathan, and Ivan. Zimbabwe is a landlocked country in southern Africa, meaning it is not bordered by any ocean or large body of water. It is bordered by South Africa to the south, Botswana to the west and southwest, Zambia to the northwest, and Mozambique to the east and northeast. This is a historical timeline of Zimbabwe. We will go into further detail in the next couple of slides about historically major events. When researching Zimbabwe's history, we notice a few time periods based around the British invasion called the pre-colonial time period, the colonial time period, and the time period when Zimbabwe gained its independence in 1980 from Great Britain. To this day, you can see Zimbabwe's struggles as it tries to discover itself. Great Britain rule leaving so suddenly left Zimbabwe in a terrible economic state. During the pre colonial era, Zimbabwe, known as Great Zimbabwe then, was the highest power in southern Africa with little to no competition for that land. They had a highly populated area with traders moving about frequently from the mid 1200s to the mid 15th century. Later on, neighboring countries and kingdoms were being overtaken by the Portuguese. The Mutapa kingdom ruled side by side with Zimbabwe. The Rosie dynasty ruled for 150 years from the late 1600s to the early 19th century. With multiple invasion attempts from the Portuguese, the Martians finally took over and began colonizing Zimbabwe. In 1888, Great Britain began colonizing Zimbabwe for the next 100 years. This would begin the colonial era. Many other countries were after Zimbabwe's lands for various reasons, including their minerals, agricultural lands, and expanded territories. Missionaries from Europe started colonizing Zimbabwe's, spreading Christianity throughout the lands, and Great Britain's rule and law caused the disbanding of the South African Confederation. On April 18th, 1980, just 40 years ago, Zimbabwe has gained its independence from Great Britain. After over 90 years of Great Britain rule, what was once named Southern Rhodesia by the British was renamed to Zimbabwe. The new independent country was led by Ian Douglas Smith. In the late 20th century, Zimbabwe had its first general election in 1985, transitioning into a presidential republic. In 1999, just before the turn of the century, there was an economic crisis which was worsened by the unpopular military movement in the Congo Civil War. A cleanup program was initiated in 2005, which left about 700,000 people homeless, where tens of thousands of shanty dwellings and illegal street stalls were destroyed. Prior to the pandemic, protests broke out over the major cities following fuel prices doubling in an attempt to combat shortages in the black market. In 2020, with the COVID-19 virus breaking out, this led to a province of 30 million people being quarantined. Zororo Makamba becomes the first COVID-19 casualty in Zimbabwe. The healthcare is exposed for the lack of preparation and care of its patients. A passport shortage begins as not enough money to create a consistent budget. In less than 1 year of the Zim dollar comeback, the US dollar is reintroduced. As of January 2020, Zimbabwe has been highly aware of COVID 19. Approximately 99% of the population understands and knows the impacts of the virus.
Awareness spiked as compared to the beginning of the pandemic. Due to the awareness, frequent hand washing has been adapted, but has constraints due to water shortages. As of January, household incomes have depreciated for approximately 90% of household farms in which operated an agricultural business. 45% of wage workers reported a reduction or disappearance in wages, totaling results over 50% in income depreciation of households. More than 9% of the population has lost their jobs due to COVID 19. COVID 19 has caused a rise in police brutality and abduction of political and media personalities. Due to the lack of health insurance and insufficient funding and efforts in taming and curing COVID 19, there is a lack of vaccination and hospitalization. Here are some of the people of Zimbabwe. Within Zimbabwe, the two majority culture groups that surround the region are Shona and Neble. The Shona are known as the founders of Great Zimbabwe, split into five major groups: Zezuru, Karanga, Manikia, Tonga Kore Kore, and Nadu. The Shona people lie around the eastern half of Zimbabwe and north of the Lundi River. The Shona make approximately 85% of the Zimbabweans. The Ndebele make up approximately 12%, and they're also known as the Zimbabwe proper, originally derived as Marabella, who lie around the city of Bulawayo. Zimbabwe has three major spoken languages today. They have Shona, Ndebele, and English. Although English is the official language of Zimbabwe, less than 5% of the population learns it as their first language. There are also 16 other languages spoken: the Chewa, Chibarawa, English, Kalango, Khoisan, Nambwai, Nadua, Debele, Shangani, Shona, Sign Language, Sothon, Tonga, Swanda, Venda, Xhosa.
Zimbabwe language history. Exclusion and marginalization of citizens and languages have led to conflict over language policies, specifically those who attempt to impose a language on other ethnic groups. There's an existence of multilingualism and multiculture that has been officially recognized in 2013 as Amendment 20 in their constitution, which declares that every person has the right to use the language of their choice and to participate in the cultural life of their choice. It describes Zimbabwe by micro social forms of language based exclusions amongst ethno linguistic policies. There have been ethno linguistic uh, hegemony situations in public spaces, specifically the Shona and Inabella in the past and present. Minority language speakers were compelled to learn in Debella. Minority languages exist in a diglossic environment in danger of extinctions. There's been a lot of cases of resistance amongst marginalization and is justified by its officials. There have been several committees created since 2001 for revitalization of indigenous languages. Language impacting historical events. Like mentioned before, Shona is one of the most dominant languages in Zimbabwe. They created the Great Zimbabwe between the 12th and 16th centuries. This created the development of nationalism and unity in Zimbabwe. The Shona are believed to be a part of the Bantu family that originated in parts of Western, Eastern, and Central Africa and migrated southwards along the savanna grasslands in search of pasture for their animals. The Shona have been compelled by circumstances to borrow terms from the super languages, Portuguese and English, to designate new technological and commercial objects ushered into their communities by this colonial historical phase of their existence. The Portuguese relations extended from the 16th century through the 19th century. Proof of this is shown mainly on the eastern border, including the Kore Kore, Nyaja, Zezuru, Manyika, and Indau. The Indabella and Katanga were not included by the Portuguese language since they were further away. Contact with the British has also ushered into the Shona language in innumerable number of English words phonologized in the process to Shona. The Shona language is fast losing some of its traditional vocabulary and is now being regarded as archaic, as people prefer to use these adoptives from English. The Shona have also cultural and linguistic contacts with the Nguni, dating as far back as the early days of the entry of the pioneer column in the country. The HIV/AIDS pandemic that has devastated humanity also had its fair share of the enrichment of the Shona language. New terms were created to distinguish the virus and the victims. The country of the country of Zimbabwe is created of many different and unique languages, with English being the primary language used in most schools and businesses. This was put in place to help the country grow economically and culturally. However, this also pushed out the indigenous languages used around the country, which did not allow them to grow other aspects of their country with these diverse languages, such as Shona and Idambela, being other popular languages. English is the primary use in education, law, media, administration, and businesses. Zimbabwe is Zimbabwe is a country with a multicultural learning system that has ultimately turned to teaching English as it's a more common and necessity in businesses in other places. In some parts of the country, students are required to speak and read English fluently at a certain grade level. Some of the requirements were to be able to give directions orally and written, read English, read a newspaper, and narrations and explanations of certain events. Language language orientations. So we were asked to reference our previous discussion post prior to the case study on Richard Ruiz language orientations that affect us personally. Here we're asked to kind of implement that into our own country. So language is a problem. National language, English, is not the most commonly spoken language because it holds the history of colonialism. Exclusion and marginalization of citizens and languages have led to conflict over language policies. Language as a resource, taught and used in schools to allow more successes in the future of business. Language as a right. The people of Zimbabwe, with the freedom to speak their native tongue, still allow language to be seen as a national language for the chance of closer ties with Great Britain and the USA. Mother tongue education is the native language still being taught in some parts of Zimbabwe? And to answer the question is yes. Shona is the mother tongue for 75% of the people in Zimbabwe. As mentioned before, people do have the right to choose which they would follow, as some do um, primarily use Shona. The English is still taught in those classrooms, uh, just because it's a necessity to be able to communicate with other um, aspects like businesses and other educational programs. Something interesting, there are different status of Shona dialects, one being low, the other being high. High is perceived as more precise, logical, and even more beautiful compared to the lower status dialect. This status plays a role in education that learners enter education either as a winner or a loser, and can affect the learner's attitude negatively. And, and lastly, language conflicts. We couldn't find anything about language conflicts today, as the country is kind of in a constant rebellious and protest state due to its economy and just the overall response to like COVID. They're more focused on trying to get the country back together than um, any like language conflicts. But we did find something quite interesting during the colonial period when Great Britain had um, invaded and colonized Zimbabwe for under 100 years. Um, they actually had this song made, which is called the Shona protest song. You can see it a little bit on the slide here. Um, but what's interesting, while I can't really share the entire song because each version is changed and manipulated um, because of what was going on at that particular time. So, right at 1890, when, 2 years into the British colonization, different things were happening um, at that time frame than when, you know, Zimbabwe was gaining their independence in 1980. So the song, what's interesting is that the lyrics and everything about the song, it changed as the time period went on. So if you want to check it out, it's called The History of the Shona Protest Song. It's about a 30-page literature. It's pretty interesting. The the last two slides of the presentation are our resources or references that we used for the presentation, and we were able to find at least one Auraria library resource per student in our group. Thank you very much for listening with us.